I'm Brad Kugler. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DM2O, and I've been doing this for 8 years, and I'm just finally beginning to learn this industry. I'm kidding. I actually think I know something about it at this point, but I'm going to defer to my trusted panelists here, who are way more experienced than I am. Morgan, why don't you start and introduce yourself and tell us what you do here?
Sure. I'm Morgan DiGiorgio, and I'm the CRO for Direct Mail 2.0 and Who's Mailing What. And we're marketing experts that specialize in omni-channel marketing and the improvement of direct mail campaigns. Brad is being very modest here today. And through our 15 technology platform, competitive intelligence database, and newly released into public beta, DM20.ai platform. That is free right now for a limited time. So if you haven't tested that out yet, please do. I'll keep it short and sweet. Looking forward to this webinar today and hearing from our stellar panelists.
All right, Eamon, over to you. Tell us who you are and what you do, and I think I got your name right.
Na- Yeah, nailed it. Eamon Barisone. So I'm a principal solutions engineer at Lob, and I've been in the direct mail space for about 5 years, and testing is very close to my heart. My background is in online advertising for companies like Amazon, and a lot of the learnings I had from testing in digital, I've been very excited to bring into the world of direct mail. So yeah, looking forward to chatting today.
Thank you, Eamon. And John, tell us who you are, and then I'll do a proper intro to what's going to happen next after you quickly introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I've been a direct mail consultant for, well, since 1981, I guess, and primarily worked with catalogs in my career, about 80 different catalogs. And over the course of that time, I've had the privilege of deciding which customers of some of the greatest catalogs in America get the last catalog. That's how I explained it to Dick Cabela. So I've pioneered machine learning, and which is kind of like testing on steroids. And I also have have done a lot of what I called audits, where I walk into a company and try to spot something that was interesting or testable or something that could change, and have seen I have, I think, 36 documented turnarounds doing that. And I have 7 cases where we changed the valuation of companies so much that they could sell for millions or go public.
Good.
And I'm sort of proud of that. I've also been pestering Brad about testing. And so he forced me to re-examine my position.
Thank you, John, for that. Let's go straight to Stephen. Sorry for our technical issues. It looks like you are able to get through the maze of complexities and were able to join us. So we're just doing a quick intro, Steve. Why don't you tell us who you are and what you do? And I want to thank you for showing up too.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm Steve Arsenijevic. I'm the VP of Client Strategy for our direct marketing practice here at RR Donnelley. I've been here about, I've been in this contiguous business through mergers and acquisitions about 31 years, and have a fervent appreciation for all things direct marketing. And again, testing is the bedrock of that. So I'm really excited to be speaking with you about this today. We do a lot of testing. We are, aggressive proponents of test marketing for our cross section of clients, and we apply, I think, every methodology known to man to try and accomplish, new winners for our clients. So again, it's a very important component of the direct marketing discipline.
Thank you, Steve. So just before I give the floor back to John to do a quick presentation on what we're all here for, I wanted to give 2 minutes on why we're here and why it came to this. Morgan and I and John have crossed paths many times over the last few years, and he is absolutely fervent and a crusader for the cause of testing. Okay. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but I have to say his affection for this subject and his knowledge had gotten me. What he says is basically right. Now, I don't know that it applies on all circumstances or all situations, but testing is important, and a lot of people don't do it. Now, we're here with Quad, who isn't here yet, and our Donnelley, and Eamon has talked about testing, but I have to say a lot of the smaller marketers, it is really not something that's in their wheelhouse for money, for the size of campaigns and budget wise, whatever. But John and I and others have had some spirited debates over the years. So we got together and say, well, let's write a white paper on how to properly do this. He's got the experience. We contributed some things. We started this project 6 months ago. We thought it would be a piece to have that anybody can use. This is not a proprietary piece. I would say it's basically John's gift to the industry. And I applaud him for that. And I really want to give him kudos for taking the countless hours he did to put this together and go back and forth with us. So this piece has not existed until John's burning passion to create it. And I basically just wanted to enable him and set him loose to create this piece and give it as a gift to anybody in the industry. The goal here is to discuss it, to debate it, and see if we can maybe poke some holes into it or agree with what we want to agree. So with that being said, this is about learning, and I'm going to turn it over to John, who's got about a 9.5 minute presentation. And I've told him I've got my hook to pull him off if it goes any longer than that. And then we're going to have a spirited debate. So John, go ahead, share your screen, and we will sit here quietly.
Okay, and I got my timer going. Okay, well, thank you for the wonderful introduction. I do want to add that I have printed millions of catalogs with R.R. Donnelley, one of my favorite printers in the world. I actually did a motivational speech, my only one ever, and got a standing ovation from your sales force. And also a lot of stuff with Quad. Okay, so you can get the slides and you can find out more about what else I've done. So when I started this with Brad and Morgan, I said, okay, well, what is testing? And then how does that connect up with the scientific method? Why does rigorous testing matter? And if you're a vendor, I hope some of the people on here, you can put in the comments if you want, if you're an agency or if you're a printer or something like that, testing can get you bigger circulation and get you longer term customer client relationships. And I've seen it happen over and over. And I'm very impressed with, for example, Gunder, who I think is a direct mail 2.0 client of yours. I think they mentioned that, but they're emphasizing that with their new clients. And I've been, fighting with them just as much as with you about how that can open a client's mind. And so this is super important, I think. And if you're a marketer and working at a company in the marketing, and I hope there's some digital marketers here, we're going to talk a little bit about how testing can get you bigger budgets and can really blow the doors off things. So I went to my library behind me and I pulled off some of the best books on direct marketing. And what I found was that there was no definition of testing. I was a little shocked. There was plenty on how to test and what you could test, but really never touched the quality of the testing. So I asked ChatGPT, and it said, it's evaluating something to determine its quality. And that's a perfectly valid test. And I've been guilty of calling out, people and saying, there's no good tests on your whole, all your case studies are no good. But the truth is testing is used in a very generic sense. And so I'm going to argue that that's okay, but there's better you can do. And the more you understand what you're trying to accomplish, the bigger budgets you can generate. What the CEO wants I was at a general agency for 2 years and we won 5 out of 5 of the pitches, which was unheard of. And in every case, the CEO afterwards would say, I like that guy who talked about accountable advertising. That's what we want. We want predictable marketing. And we hear, the buzzword, and this was probably 15 or 20 years ago, was predictive modeling. Okay. And, everybody wants to talk about prediction because you never bet enough on the winning horse, right? How much is knowing the future for sure worth? If you think about the Back to the Future movie number 2, where he had the race programs, made a fortune just knowing who would win. But in our world, in the world of humans, science and engineering are able to figure out how to get a rocket to the moon. They're able to figure out how to build houses that don't collapse when we get a foot or two of snow, which we just did. And the way they do it is by identifying, isolating, and validating causal forces. Okay. And my undergrad was in a lot of philosophy of science and a lot of history of science. And it's almost comical to read what the early scientists thought was the cause of things. Aristotle thought things got happier as more joyful, that attracted them to the earth. But what we've done instead with the scientific method and the scientific revolution is we've identified the actual forces which produce repeatable effects, which is what your CFO wants. I would say that most testing falls under the category of observation. Okay. So how do we get from testing to observation? This was a catalog that I worked on long ago, 1986. And we had great clients. And I would hand this out to friends who owned companies. And I'd say, hey, you might use some of this kind of stuff. And they'd say, why would I want a Pontiac hat? And I'd say, no. You need to put, you can put your logo on there. And they said, oh yeah, we buy that stuff. Well, after it happened about a dozen times, I figured, hey, people are not getting what we're doing. And so I went to the creative director. I said, we need a test that isolates the your imprint here message. And so if you look at these two catalogs, I put this up at DMA's 100 people. Most people don't even get what's different about the two catalogs. But the hypothesis was that people didn't understand the logos. And so we were going to tell them more clearly. And what happened was we did a 600,000 piece test. I think it was at Donnelley, actually. And the catalog with the your imprint here, the ugly catalog, did 40% better. Okay. And that gives us an explanation of the causal force of being clear. It also disproves the industry maxim that creative only has a 10% impact. And it's only by taking the time to test your data. Your data will produce observation, but all data is historical. There is no data from the future. Never. No matter what people talk about real-time data, it's just newer, fresher data. And so in order to get to the future, we have to generate theory. Now, what's the cost of this? Well, Hammacher, CFO, may they rest in peace, said, I don't like testing because if A beats B, why did we even do B? Right? Why did we do 300,000 catalogs with the company logos on them? It eroded our profits, and it's true. But the problem is we didn't know that we were eroding the profits. And so that one test took a company from printing 1 million catalogs a year to printing 6 million catalogs while I was there. Okay. And ended up selling it for millions. And so there's also a destructive cost of not testing. JCPenney lost $4 billion of company valuation. Nordstrom's quit mailing coupons and the foot traffic dried up. They could have tested. They could have said, let's try a few stores, but no, they just stopped it all. J. Jill wanted to go fully digital, so they stopped their catalog. And the president got on the stock call and said, it was a big mistake. We went too fast, too soon, and she got fired. Musician's friend, while we were working with him, said, why are we mailing all these catalogs? And we said, well, let's find out. And so we developed a holdout test where we didn't mail 30,000 of the roughly 500,000 customers. And what we found was for every $1 that they put into printing a catalog, they got $3 of bottom line EBITDA profit. And that kept them mailing through some really tumultuous economic financial times. So prediction, which is what the CEO wants, it's invaluable, is testing. The gold standard testing assures prediction. Now, I'm not saying there isn't good, valid testing in all kinds. I've done it with a one-man show, and I explained his market to him, and he had it revolutionized his business. But if you talk to your clients about prediction, it develops their long-range vision. It can grow your budget with them. It can grow your circulation if you're a printer. And if you're a marketer in a company, it can get you bigger budgets. And with permission of Brad, I said, Okay. If you're interested in me coming into your company and looking around, we'll have a special offer for you. There's a QR code. You can reach out to me at LinkedIn. Okay. I beat it. 9 minutes.
Fantastic, John. Thank you very much. It was well prepared. And I do want to say, well, we're gonna put up everybody's contact information at the end with some QR codes so that you can contact these people with specific questions. If you guys do have a question or anything, rather than put it in the chat because there's a lot of people just introducing themselves, put it in the Q&A so that I can disperse these equally to our finely esteemed panelists. In the meantime, I want to get started and ask John a simple question since he probably put in more work on this than anybody else. Why is this a passion to you? What drives you to continue to beat the drum for this for 30, 40 years? What is it that drives this?
I went to a little Bible college down the road called the University of Wisconsin, and I was trying to prepare for ministry. So I took these courses in history of science and philosophy of science. I ended up getting an MA, and my thesis is on an actual scientific problem. And a pastor friend told me I should go into business instead of ministry because I liked ideas more than people. And yeah, and so I gave it a go and got fired, and then prayed for a miracle job, and lo and behold, I became a marketing consultant. And one of my first big projects, which is on the wall behind me, if I zoomed out a little bit, was a catalog, and I got paired up with a seasoned list broker. And he handed me 6 data cards and said, try these and let me know what happens. And I said, well, can you tell me anything about these lists? And he said, don't worry about it. We don't worry about any of the extra stuff. We just worry about what worked and what didn't. Well, I knew from my philosophical background that there's more to it than that. That if you really want to understand prediction, you really want to isolate the causal variables. And what was interesting was this was a computer supply catalog, which the category had just exploded from the time we started to the time we mailed it. And there were like 3 before we started, and there were like 60 by the time we got in the mail, believe it or not. And so the lists, what we identified was the computer lists failed because everybody was renting those and getting deluged. And the normal business lists, like Business Week, they didn't work either because they were just too general. It was the middle ones where they'd have a couple of, articles on computers. Those were the ones that worked. And that perspective, philosophical, or that observation drove that company into multi-million-dollar growth. And it was like, hey, even without marketing courses, I can do this. I can test. I can figure it out. I can let the market tell me what works. And I've never recovered from that, and had some explosive wins, by finding 1 or 2 good ideas that we could test, verify, and then roll out like crazy. And the white paper includes several of those stories, so I won't duplicate.
Yeah, so hopefully people will take advantage and read it. But let me get some feedback, and I'll start with Steve here. Is there an experience that you would point to, or a short story where you did direct mail testing and the results were memorable, and it's something you can share? I mean, if you can mention client names, great. If you can't, then you can maybe say an industry.
Well, it's fascinating to me because, again, I've walked very similar path to John, and his name is iconic in this business. But I also graduated from school as a philosophy major and fell into marketing.
Trend. I see a trend there.
Woo!
Yeah, so we definitely a little further south than the University of Michigan, Loyola, but the idea being that I think it was David Ogilvy that says, direct marketing is the science of advertising. So any positive experience, one of the great passions that we have in direct marketing is the win, and pointing to this EBITDA growth. This is, the ability to affect that change for our clients is really the jazz that good direct marketers bring to their clients' table. In terms of, it's the surprise test result that really has moved the needle for me personally. The counterintuitive result that drives in. And I think John pointed to one, pretty doesn't always win. Okay, so oftentimes we have creative design agencies and CEOs and top marketers who want to put this brand identity and this massive color and this overwhelming promotional presentation versus what we refer to as a blind treatment, and often most of the time the blind treatment wins. Interestingly enough, now a recent example of a very large food service, in-home food service direct marketer. I'm not going to mention the name, but they are out there, and they were going through the life cycle of creative, mandating more color in the piece and more promotion, more branding, more identity in the piece. And just for the sake of jazz, we decided to take that very colorful self closed end mailer and put it in a blind envelope with some very innocuous operational official looking stuff on it, and it generated a 35% lift. Okay, so well in advance covering the cost of the envelope, and delivering that EBITDA that John spoke of to the bottom line. Again, counterintuitive. Nobody under the sun would have said you take this fancy looking thing versus this, even if you hold it up to focus groups, they would all say, oh, I want the one that's more informative, but the one that intrigues you, that gets you into the package, that causes you to have handle time, that's the one that wins. And those are some of the experiences that I think have followed us in almost every experience with client testing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Totally. And to Eamon here, you have also a deep direct marketing background. Is there situations, and I'm hoping to develop a little controversy here and stir the pot a little bit, so I admit my fallacy. What do you recommend testing in all cases? And if not, what would be the cases that you would bypass the initiative to test?
So I wish I had a hot take here and could say, here's a time where you ought not test. But if you're sending marketing mail, so of course, like transactional mail, sure, maybe no need to test there. But I really tried to rack my brain and tried to imagine a scenario in marketing mail in which I wouldn't recommend running some kind of test. But the thing is you can always be testing something. Now, maybe the volume of the campaign is going to be really small and you're not going to have stat sig or something like that. So maybe you can't always run a good test. But I always have a thought that as long as you're aware that the test you're running, if you're aware of the limitations of it, you can still take those learnings back from it and use those as directional to form a hypothesis for a test at scale or a test with, good confidence in stat sig. So, um, I wish I could say there's a good time to not test, but I just think always test something. I can't imagine not wanting to test at least one little variable.
And let's take a typical. I'm a I'm a car dealer and I'm local or regional. What would be in a test? You want a controlled environment, right? There's one thing you want to test. It's a creative or a headline or something else. What would be an example of a size of a test? Oh, they're selling Land Rovers to 5,000 people within a county. Yes, it's a high ticket item, but do you have grounds if you're really only mailing to 5,000 qualified people to do a test? And if so, what is the test size?
I
I mean,
think, yeah, I mean, I don't have a magic number for a test, but I usually think like if you're not sending 30K mailers or something like that, like that's probably on my low end of where can I ensure that we really can trust the learnings. But
okay. That's
that
I was fishing for a number. Everybody's and there's nothing set in stone, but I would imagine that a mailing that's in this four digits may not justify a test unless you're doing what do I call it? You're adding something to each mailing that may change the results and its subsequent mailings.
I would
Iteration. That's what I'm talking. Iteration of that mailing.
even on a small mailer though, I might test something small and then get the learnings back and know that this might be anecdotal, this might not be significant, but even that still might inform the way I think about my next large test. I don't know if John or Steve, you would agree with that, or if that's creating too much noise, but that's still my thought.
I agree. I think in reality, if we're honest, even that 5,000 piece mailer that doesn't have a test cell against it is a test. Anything you do in direct marketing is a test. You're going to read those results. You're going to try and analyze what that is, and you're going to try and figure out what to do next. So I think the point that was originally made is that if we apply the stabilizing factors, the scientific elements, the practice of testing in a disciplined way, you get more out of the test. But just throwing your mail out there, you're going to read those results, and your test results are going to be what they are. So I think that's an argument to say you are always testing. You must always test. And even though it's difficult with sample size, I think stacking experiences together. The goal that we're looking for in proper testing is the gravity of the result to compare one pile versus another pile, and we need enough to say the more we get, the more confident we are. But again, to Eamon's point, even if we're using directional or anecdotal type result, that's something we can build on. And it's not the most desirable, but we have to make lemonade whenever we can. Right. So, yeah, I agree.
We're definitely getting a lot of interaction from the audience, and I don't want to divest too much from that. So, but I want to ask Morgan, this is where we start kicking up some dust. When you add a digital campaign, let's face it, this is a digital ad world, and most marketing is done digitally at this point. So if you're doing a direct mail campaign, and many people do it with an omni-channel focus where you have a digital component, how does that change the testing? And I'm going to let Morgan do this because I know we have a lot of experience on this. We don't have so I'm going to rely on the testing guys, and I'm going to rely on Morgan's experience to try to create a little bit of a debate here on this, because you're adding variables, and I understand that. So how do you do a legitimate test in this situation? Go ahead, Morgan.
But before I segue into that, though, I do want to comment when you were, asking about the size of the test, because in our environment, in a lot of instances, most people, when they are testing something, they are trying to test an incremental lift by adding digital or adding omni-channel on top of a direct mail campaign. And there's always a little bit of pushback there because clients are pushing back because they don't want to spend more. So we know that testing is effective, but they don't want to spend an additional amount of budget in order to test whether or not this omni-channel works. But if they do, let's say traditionally they're mailing 500,000 pieces a month or 1 million pieces a month, and they say, okay, well, let's test adding omni-channel on top of it then, but we'll just test it on a 5,000 piece mailer. How are you going to get, that's not a large enough cell in order to identify the KPIs that you need to see if there really was an incremental lift. You're comparing apples to oranges. If you're typically mailing 500,000 pieces, how are you going to gauge a lift off of a 5,000 piece mailer, right? It just doesn't make any sense. So I think that quantity is important and something that needs to be correlated to what it is exactly you're trying to extract from that test. And it has to be in alignment with what your current marketing budget traditionally is, right? Now, adding omnichannel makes testing more important and a lot more complicated, right? Because now channels are contaminating each other. So
you don't have a control unless you pick the control as one specific thing. So yeah.
Right. In a mail-only world, you can test version A versus B, and you can measure the response. In an omni-channel world, now you have to think in terms of assignment. Who was assigned to receive the omni-channel? Who was not assigned to receive the omni-channel? And most importantly, did your control group accidentally get hit by retargeting email, SMS, platform optimization? Because most marketers are using multiple channels today, and that really is complicating things. So you need to isolate what it is you're truly testing. And with Direct Mail 2.0, when we're trying to see if omnichannel drove a lift in response, most of the time I see people doing this wrong, okay? And I will tell you one of the most common mistakes. They've got 2 different lists that they're mailing to, and they're not isolating where these people are being driven to. We've got list A and we've got list B, and guess what? They are all being driven to the same website where every single prospect is being retargeted with digital ads. And then guess what? They are all getting the digital enhancement, and the supposed control group you paid for digital marketing for to see if it's lifting that group's response is getting minimized and diluted by displaying ads to the mail group that you didn't want to display ads to.
So
So
it's impossible. You'd have to create a landing page or some other
correct. They need to be completely
website.
isolated. There is digital marketing out there where you can do specifically one-to-one targeting by list upload, or you have to isolate specific landing pages and not be gauging any kind of response by anybody that went to the homepage if you are truly trying to identify if there was an incremental lift.
Yeah, it is difficult. And we get asked this all the time. And I'll tell you that we've had this happen recently where a reseller is like, well, show me your case studies, show me the proof of the improvement. And it's so hard to isolate a test. And even if a client does this, we're never sure that they even did it right. So it's a very, very complicated math problem with many, many variables. So when asked for this type of thing, it's difficult to give it, especially if it's been commingled or muddled with a pure direct mail, but still had retargeting going on the website through some digital agency, you know?
Correct.
It casts a nullification on the whole process. So, all right.
You can send them to me.
Yeah, well, I wanted to see if some of our more seasoned experts, Steve and John, had a comment about the specific part of it, about the omni-channel component to testing.
It's the emerging category. I mean, we RD is now selling digital and mail in combination. I think what Morgan said is really taking that mail file and then uploading it and dropping digital on top of that mail file, so that direct connection rather than generally mailing a file and then going separately and finding the similar persona. That's where variance comes in. So the first thing is that. The second thing is there's some technology enablers like we're proponents of flow code, and we're proponents of some of the other technologies where that direct connection, whether you responded by the banner ad or whether you responded by the mail piece, is controllable, and that metric is now available to us. So that's been a tremendous boon to some of the complexities that you spoke of. But I think the bottom line is, yes, the big mistake that we see is sending people to the common website. And in today's age, again, that's where technology kicks in. It's not as expensive to establish these landing environments that are unique and that correspond to the impetus that sent you there. Not only do they raise response, but they also help you organize your management of the respondents and testing evaluation.
And that's a good point. I'm going to get to you, John, but I want to acknowledge some of the discourse that's going on in the chat, and Toby Daggerheart in particular. But yes, QR codes, UTMs, specific landing pages. That is the way to do it, and that requires a team effort to set up and make it very controlled environment, but it can be done. I'm just saying it adds complexity. I'm not saying it's impossible. Yeah. It's just next level to really do a truly scientific control group test. So yeah, John, please comment on omni-channel in testing.
There's a good case in the white paper, the Lovesac case, where the VP of marketing called and said, our catalog isn't doing that well. And I think he was calling to fire me. And he said, why should we mail something to our existing customers who already know what we do when our main problem is brand recognition, which was well documented by the consultants that he'd hired. And I said, would you really like to know the answer? He said, what do you mean? He was from Mountain Dew, He said, how could you know the answer? And I said, well, what we'll do is not mail some of the people. And we'll mail the catalogs. We'll keep track of who got it and who didn't. And I'm a huge proponent of holdout testing the mail, which we can control, and identifying for sure the causal forces. There's a priority of media, that some media gets you much better information. All the mass media throws itself away, but mail can't throw itself away. It sits on the table. You have to have engagement. You have to make a decision. There's uniqueness. And so if we find the big things and settle those in mail, and that's in the Lovesac case, then you can use the omni-channel to pour gasoline on it, and you can make a fortune. Lovesac went from 75 million to 100 million in 1 year. And it was all same store sales. I mean, how many retailers can do that? And it wasn't a great economic period either, right? I mean, and later the founder, Sean, said our marketing team, they figured out how to allocate their resources. And they also said to me privately, you taught us so much, right? So think about the hierarchy. I know it takes longer to find it out in mail. I know it's putts, but if you could really find out something for sure and get your theory down, get your explanation, your theory down, get your CEO on board with it, then you can just pour money into social and into mass media, and you can just make a fortune. Which is, if you get to the question 7 on the economics, I have one point I want to make besides, and then
It's coming. It's coming. We're going to go on to question, and I'm gonna see if Eamon has anything for this. Are there any horror stories in testing where things went wrong, and what did you learn from it? And if one of you guys also have something, I don't know who's got a story for what. So if you
Yeah.
let me know. But
Yeah,
the idea is that let's teach somebody from our own mistakes. That's what I'm hoping to get at here.
I have one that comes to mind. Very large home goods company, and they said we want to do some testing within audiences. So they were basically upselling current customers, right? Or they customers they already had in their database. And they broke out their audience group into 4 different subsets and said we're going to send the same campaign to these 4 different audience subsets, and we're going to try and get an understanding of which profile responds to this kind of offer the best. But there was some problems with the setup. First is that breaking their audience into 4 made each of those test groups too small to really trust the learning. So I guess going back to what we were talking about earlier, which we flagged and we said, I'm not sure this is a big enough test to draw a lot of strong conclusions from. And then the second thing that they didn't really account for is looking at the folks that they selected within those audiences and understanding their past purchase behavior. So it wasn't really a balanced um, audience test against other factors that also applied to the folks within those audience groups. They were testing against that one factor being the audience group they were a part of, but not accounting for other things. Um, so they ran a test. They drew some conclusions from it based on a small number of results, but those results being much stronger in one of the 4 quadrants. Again, I kind of said to them, look, this might be good to think about for future testing, but I don't think this is strong enough to draw this strong of a conclusion on. And they said, oh, that's okay. They then took all their budget and pushed it on that audience for a large campaign. The campaign did not perform well. And so the follow-up to that was now having to go back and doing a similar campaign to the first one, but in a way that was going to be that was going to be basically had to go back to the drawing board and do another audience test and do it more intelligently. But I think that budget that they wasted on that second send was truly unnecessary, and they could have iterated on that first test to do a better second audience test and then poured money into the learnings from that.
Interesting. Can you divulge what kind of money was wasted by not doing that? Is it?
It was the mail volume was in the millions for
Oh,
the
Wow.
second send, and um that was based off of testing. I can't remember exactly, but I want to say the initial test was like 25,000 in each audience group or something. So they just took a huge learning off of relatively small initial.
yes, comparative to the whole.
Right.
Interesting. All
Yeah.
right, so I want to just do some housekeeping here. We've got about 13 audience questions here. I want to take the next 7 or 8 minutes to go through some of our questions and let you guys comment. So I'm gonna jump around a little. I want to open this one up and I'll let Morgan, because she's only spoke once. Is testing something that AI will replace or make obsolete in the future? I want to see what Morgan says, and then we'll let Steve and John make quick comment on that.
No, I don't think that AI will replace testing, but it absolutely will make testing more powerful, right? Because we have access to this artificial intelligence that will help us generate hypotheses faster. We can predict segments, personalize creative, or optimize offers, which will help us experience cost savings, but you're still going to need real world experiments to prove what actually causes lift. Marketing is full of variables, okay? Seasonality, competition, platform changes, creative fatigue, and AI can help guide you. And it is such a lucrative tool. And I have to put a plug here. I strongly encourage you to try DM20.ai. We have ran almost 2 billion pieces of mail through our platform. We have something that most people don't have in our database, and that is response rate data.
Real attribution to
Yeah.
actual mail pieces,
Yeah, and
which
tagged,
LLMs do not have.
correct. And tagged every element of a DM campaign from font to offer creative, color, you name it. So, when testing becomes a barrier because of cost, but we know how important it is, leveraging AI to mitigate some of those costs up front by ensuring that we're leveraging the most appropriate mail piece by utilizing AI, or the most appropriate audiences by grabbing data from CRMs and things like that, is just so beneficial and helpful. But it will not truly make testing obsolete. Testing will still be the referee.
Thank you. Let me give Steve some airtime on that point. Do you have anything to comment on AI?
Just to quicken yes, I agree everything that Morgan said. AI is a fabulous tool. It's across our business. The analytics services are enhanced. The decision making on what to test can be enabled. But the fundamentals of testing: what did I do? What did I get for it? What do I do next? When applied to direct marketing, that is irreplaceable, and I don't see a near term AI alternative to that.
No.
Yeah. I mean, some of these kids coming up in their 20s that are relying on AI for companionship and everything else they do in life, I think they may differ. I think they may see AI as a solution for almost anything. But I agree that without specific data on attribution for specific respondents and creative and type of campaigns, that is not in these generalized LLMs. So,
Yeah, there's nothing that beats the actual knowing, the predictive nature of
and doing
knowing and
it.
putting your money on the line and forecasting for profit. You have to have live experience there, and I don't see a virtual alternative.
Good. John, I did want to get to you. You wanted to speak on the economics of sample size and testing. Am I correct?
Well,
Let me give you 90
yeah.
seconds to
Okay.
opine on that.
I'll put a link in the comments. I watched a great video from Veritasium, who I like. It's a math kind of channel on YouTube. And they were talking about whether you're in a normal distribution world. Mark Ritson had a great article on Walmart versus Target and said, Walmart is concentrated on execution and done a great job and grown like crazy. If you're in a world where you just incrementally improve, then testing, just be consistent, just keep at it. But if you're in a world of the big get bigger, those kind of worlds, a test can catapult your business out of its category and can multiply by tenfold in months your profitability. And marketing is at the center of that. And AI is good at the optimization, but most of what it finds as correlation is spurious. And the anomaly is usually what gives you the breakthrough. And that's what the human will spot that AI will never spot. And I've gone head to head against AI modelers for decades, believe it or not. And they don't win. They only win on paper, but when you put it in the mail, they don't. And that's Morgan's point. And I think that's the greatest one.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, I'm going to jump to the last question here, which I'm trying to give some takeaways to the audience and to history here. And I'll let you each answer this as briefly as you can. What do people seem to test most often that might not be the first thing to test? And I'm looking at the control, the audience, the creative, the timing, the geography. What is it that I guess people seem to miss? And you guys can each have a stab at it, and I'll just shut up. And we'll start with Eamon, and we'll go around the group here.
Yeah, I'll go quick. I do think testing creative is important. I don't think, like, I don't want to downplay the importance of testing different creative factors against each other, different messages against each other. But I tend to see our customers bring that to the table as the first thing they're thinking about testing. And I often advise them to think about testing audience or testing offer and value prop, maybe even before testing content.
Okay, great. Uh, Mo, you want to take a stab? We'll listen.
I actually was going to say the same thing. I feel like people start with creative because it's tangible, but it's not the first lever I pull. It's usually audience and offer. There's nothing more important than who you're marketing to and then what you're marketing to those people. But I also think that it's really important in testing for people to pay attention to incrementality. So, marketers are measuring response, but response really isn't the point. You can get response that maybe would have happened anyway, but like for us, the question is, did the mail or the omni-channel enhancement create additional conversions that you wouldn't otherwise get, right? And I just think that as opposed to looking at, hey, we got orders, looking if you got or created an incremental profit is extremely important to pay attention to.
All right, Steve, your turn. What should
Yeah,
people?
again, totally concur. It's an absolute agreement, but I think that clients spend a lot of time on the side of economizing. What can I do to take cost out and maintain the response? And that overweighs their balanced testing. Oftentimes, to what John said, the breakthrough comes from something that's counterintuitive. Sometimes when we put more cost into the delivery of the piece, we get a exponential response, and we need to evaluate that as a future investment. And testing in general is an investment category for our clients that then turns it away from being an expense to something that I need to nurture and get more profit and more EBITDA out of. So testing too much on the downside is going to get you only limited performance results.
Great. Thank you. John, tell me, what are we testing? What's the number one thing?
People love testing format, which is relatively hard. There were comments in the thing about what about letters versus postcards. That it's hard because they're not the same, and you can do it. It's just tricky. Or medium, digital versus mail. That's also difficult. Or design, changing the pictures and the typeface and that sort of thing. And usually it's low impact. I would recommend that all digital marketers do a DM holdout test. I would also recommend turning off your digital for 1 week, which would probably pay for your DM test, and see if anything happens. That's what happened with Uber. They found out nothing happened, and it can often pay for that test. And so that's what I would suggest.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to share everybody's little QR code and we're going to go through some audience questions here. We have quite a few, and I'm going to just start at the top. And again, if you've got an answer for our audience here, please just yell it out. An anonymous attendee asks, what books do you recommend for direct marketing? Anybody have a suggestion here?
I had a slide, but it went by pretty fast. If you get the slides, there's a good stack of them.
Everybody will get a copy of the slides. They'll get a link to download the white paper as well as a copy of the webinar, which will be on our website probably tomorrow, I'm guessing. All right. Another anonymous asked, what are your thoughts on direct response ads in direct mail? Can it work? Why don't we clarify direct response ads? Because I think people may have differing ideas on those. Anybody want to comment on direct response ads in direct mail?
Well, be careful not to just take an ad and put it in an envelope, because I've seen that fail colossally. Get somebody that's got direct mail, like I worked with Oakley. They didn't have a response device on it in their mailer.
Wow.
You just can't believe what people will do. So get somebody with some knowledge to help you put that ad into an envelope or whatever.
Yeah, clearly there's technique associated to the mail channel that's different than the banner channel and the email. So each one of them has creative rules of the road that accentuate the results. So you can't just take a TV spot and convert it into a direct mail piece. You've got to, take the offer and the intent of the message, and they've got to work in tandem together.
Yeah.
All right.
There's core elements each direct mail piece really should encompass. And if you're looking to see some successful direct mail campaigns and what's working for specific verticals and industries, you can always tap into the Who's Mailing What database also.
The shameless plug
Nice. That
exists
was nice.
here.
Yeah, good, good. I
Yeah.
like that.
All right. Next one, Lacey Lee. It's understandable that B2B and B2C audiences respond differently. Do you have any insights into, I think it means direct mail testing strategies you've seen succeed in B2B versus B2C? Does anyone have a comment on this?
Yeah, at the risk of being obvious, I think with B2B, a lot of it is about testing the persona and testing the personas of the people that you're reaching out to within these businesses. Um, that's what I've seen end up, drawing back good information for our customers in B2B marketing is understanding the persona that they're marketing to and testing different personas within those businesses.
I,
So
I
when
have a
marketing
crazy
to a
one I'd
business,
like to share.
I just want to clarify. In
Okay.
marketing to a business, you still want to find an individual in that business, not just send it blindly into an entire company, correct? You need an identity within that business. Okay, good.
100%.
All right,
Maybe,
John, tell
maybe not,
us.
maybe not. I've
Oh.
had success in just doing title slugs, outperforming individual names,
Mm.
especially if the job is not core, like in that imprinted merchandise. Somebody's running the picnic this year that orders from you. The next year it's somebody different, and so it gets thrown in the trash. And so picnic planner will outperform the person. And for Adobe, for a division of Adobe, we actually tracked, because they had so many names, we actually tracked how many pieces of mail we put into a building, an office building, regardless of business name. And we modeled on that because in graphic arts, there's an area of Chicago where the graphic artist offices are. And in my agency, I had 3 different company names for my own person because they wanted to do direct this and direct that. And so sometimes, the opposite works really, really well. And we went from mailing $500,000 a month to mailing $1 million a month. We raised the revenue, the profit per piece by 74%. And we went from a $25 million company to a $50 million annualization in 4 months by modeling on the business address, not on the company name or the person. Believe it or not, I can.
Good info. This is great insight. And there's a lot of wisdom in the amount of years you've been doing this. So I'm happy to hear that. All right, next one. Barb Fatino asks, how do you persuade clients to test? It can be so costly. What do you suggest is the best way to sell the idea to them? Who's had some experience with that? Steve?
As we recommend a test, any credible direct marketer would come to the table saying, "Here's what we expect, or here's what you'll get if this test wins." We have to set up the performance parameters before the test, so it becomes a financial decision. Is it worth it for me to invest this amount into the test to gain this advantage
The
or this
lift.
upsell or this upside? So it's
Yeah.
really a financial discussion that drives that. And again, with our large clients, we gain from successful client testing. We get more volume, we get more work. So we're in this together with our clients, and we work collaboratively to incentivize stable and productive testing. So even to the point of participating in those things when it makes sense for us as a business. So that is an important component.
Interesting. That's great. Eamon, did you have a comment on that?
No, honestly, nothing to add to that. That covered everything I would say.
All right, Morgan.
No, same thing. I mean, what's the value that you're going to receive once you identify the data needed from the testing, and how is that going to boost overall conversions from your direct mail marketing budget, and what kind of revenue does that drive for your organization? So it's an opportunity cost conversation. It's just as Steve said, it's financial.
Yeah, we work with break-even analysis. We want to show that in a financial numeric way to say this
Absolutely.
is what you stand to gain, and then it becomes a business decision rather than
And
a
if
legal.
it doesn't come to fruition, you said you partner. What would you eat some of the cost? Do you refund them? Do you credit them? I mean, what's the mechanics there?
No, I think that what we try and do is defray some of the spiked cost in testing. So we try and amortize the cost of testing over the extended jobs and extended relationship. We like to annualize with our clients the testing budget so that we're able to apply testing across the board. And we're if it makes sense and we stand to gain volume from it, we will invest in the somewhat of the cost of that test differential. So if sometimes we'll offer a client a test module at the same price as the rollout if we feel this is a well constructed, scientifically based, odds-on chance of winning. So again, really the results are we share in the results. And again, if you're world class, you're getting 3, maybe 4, 30, maybe 40% of your tests to work. So there are downsides on testing, but we have to manage that, and the wins on an annualized basis will definitely cover and much more EBITDA delivery and cover the cost of those lost tests. So it's looking at it from a financial perspective.
Very insightful. Okay, I'm going to have to pick and choose questions due to time because I like to keep these things to the required time, but I want people to get their money's worth. I've got another question from an anonymous attendee. What element in direct mail, frequency, size, etc., would you say would make a successful campaign with direct mail, no digital? So what's most important, frequency or size? I'd love to hear any opinions on this.
Wow.
I'm going to go frequency. What
Yeah.
say you guys?
Yeah.
Because repetitiveness in marketing works. Does anyone have a differing opinion?
I would agree. It's a very broad-based question, but we believe in like the rule of 7. Where you need to penetrate a household or penetrate a prospect a number of times before they make an optimal, decision or optimized decision. But size is a factor. I don't want to discount the relationship between mailbox busting and presentation values as well. But certainly, I think if having to choose between one or the other, it's sort of a frequency multi-touch evaluation that probably would win more often than not.
Okay,
I'd
great.
agree.
Yeah.
I've recommended folks with a certain mail volume budget divide that in 3 and hit people 3 times rather than hit everybody once.
Yes.
I would agree. I would agree too. All right. With that, I don't want to keep our guest any longer. I have more questions, but just as a closer, I want to thank the panelists. It's been very insightful. I really appreciated John sharing his decades of wisdom in the form of a white paper and allowing us to put our name on it. Again, all of this will be sent to you via email in the next 24 hours. All of the information will be on our dm20.com website as well. Please do check out dm20.ai. It's a free public beta till the end of the year. Test it out. We are giving it for free to help teach this AI to be smarter about direct mail. And of course, you have everybody's QR code. Feel free to ask them questions directly. And again, thank everyone. I'm pleased that you all came, and have a great and happy New Year and holidays. All right, guys. Bye-bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.